From the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfillment right here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your host, the Vega Bomber, PJ Dunn.
All right, welcome everyone to the latest episode or installment, if you prefer that term, of the Fulfillment Show. So, you know, this is the show where we talk about movies, then we talk about movies, then we talk about TV series, then we talk about directors, we talk about their mama, their cousin. If it's movie related, we're probably going to talk about it. And so welcome once again to that. Let me introduce my cast of characters today. As you know, we have a special contributor that comes in whenever he darn well feels like it, and we allow him to do it. That is Horror Mike.
I just showed up today. I just felt like, no one pre-planned or anything. It is always a pleasure. I love hanging out with you guys. So it's good to be here talking film and pop culture with you guys. It's always fun.
Well, we appreciate it, Mike, and the fans love you as well. So we definitely have to make sure that you're here. And also, we cannot forget that trusty co-host of the Fulfillment Show. He is the guy that can turn the lights off, turn the mics off whenever he wants to. It is Kazak.
Greetings and salutations, campers. Welcome to DallasOnAir.com.
Yeah. So let's get into this. So today, as we were thinking about it, we were like sitting down in our meeting and we're saying, hey, what should we talk about now? Yeah. And so I had this idea. I was like, well, you know what we should talk about is probably how well we're doing so far as in terms of movies for 2022. So let's do a half-year review because the year is already halfway over. Can you believe that, Mike?
Halfway over. It's crazy. It is really crazy. I'm shocked. But, you know, 2020 converted time and space. So, you know, time's just going faster. You know, the shutdown was 100 years ago. So, roughly.
Yeah. Hey, Kazak, didn't it make our list a little bit hard? Because there's just not that many great things out there, but there's some.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that I paid for to go see on a big screen, but the ones that I went to go see and that we're talking about. So not a busy first half of the year, but enough to get an hour at least out of.
Sure.
We'll give you our hour, folks.
Yeah. Right now, and I'm going to touch on this with my what I saw over the weekend. Yeah. Right now, where it's at is, I've said this before on other shows, it's television, man. The small screen is just steamrolling right now. The big screen, I'm not really getting that oomph to go out there. It feels like right now. It feels like Hollywood is putting their money into the streaming wars. You feel it. It feels like. Don't get me wrong, Hollywood's not just on a shoestring budget, but it feels like all the top talent. Yeah, they're going to the streaming.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think that the pandemic had a lot to do with this because when you shut down movie theaters, the only option you have is the screen, the small screen, and then therefore, if you've got these people as captive, as a captive audience, now is the time to up your game if you're small screen TV series type stuff because you've got them at home now. They can't go anywhere like during the pandemic. So I think they upped their skills during that time frame. And I don't know if movies are going to catch up. They're trying to, but I'm still holding out hope for these movies because it still is an event. It's still fun to go do, and you can't do everything just sitting at home, or else you just feel like you don't get out much.
And I feel I can't speak for everyone. I feel like we're all, at least especially our fandom and us at least, we all come from film. Like we all really are. We don't hate television or anything, but we're all movie fans. Like we like the silver screen,
the event, the spectacle.
Exactly. So
getting your friends up to all go out to one place,
get everyone together. So that's why I was. It is very strange to see Hollywood kind of flip flopping because it used to be TV was the one that was no one really cared about. It was like, oh, you go home and watch that in between the next big summer blockbuster. Now it feels like, well, you go see the movies while you're waiting for the next season of the next big show. So it is very strange to see that kind of flip almost.
Yeah, and so that means we got to watch and see if there's a flip back, and can it flip back? And so that's what we're all going to be watching with our inquiry minds. Exactly. So let's get into our first segment of the day, which is the Just Seen It segment. And with Just Seen It, what we do is we talk about the latest things we've seen, whether it be a movie or a TV series, right? And this gives you a good sense of what kind of taste we have for TV shows or movies, and you can see if yours is kind of like ours or not. So let's start with you, our special contributor. What have you seen here lately?
All right, so kind of lead in from what we talked about before. It is mildly horror themed, but I do think the reason it's such a hit is because it balances so many genres. I finished the newest season of Stranger Things, season 4. So that was my just seen it, and outstanding. I think it's a very strong, good finale to a very strong show. Like many shows, it's not perfect. It does have some wobbly parts. This season, incredibly strong season, and that's why I'm getting this kind of feel, because famously, as you know, every episode of this cost $30 million. This show costs more than some of the biggest budget movies that have ever existed, and you see it on the screen. I also saw Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan looks really good at $10 million an episode, but you see that $20 million difference. Like it looks like I was about to make the joke. It looks like $1 million, but it just looks incredible. And the story's strong. It's well paced, and Stranger Things balances a bunch of genres that really you don't see. You got romance, you got mystery, you got spy thriller, you got horror, which is what I come here for. And I was telling you before the show, I believe that this show there's a high probability, if it sticks to landing for its final season, there's going to be a whole generation where 30 years out, this is going to be their Star Wars. Like, 30 years out, Star Wars was as big as it could ever have been. From Return of the Jedi, I think from season 5 of Stranger Things, again, this is if they stick to landing, they could very easily pull a Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones could have been the next Lord of the Rings and now be remembered for a terrible ending. Stranger Things, if it sticks to landing, I think you're going to have an entire generation that grew up with it, and it could potentially change storytelling as kind of going back to this 80s style storytelling. Because all Stranger Things is doing, if you know the trick, it's just homaging and taking those beats from the 80s.
Yeah. As these filmmakers are saying, let's go back. As they make these movies, they're saying, what was the funnest time we ever had? Well, it wasn't necessarily in college, perhaps, although you may not remember the good times you had in college. Yeah. You go back to when you were a kid, because that's when you were free. You were able to do a bunch of stuff. So it makes sense that these guys who are closer to our age and older would go back to the 80s because that was the funnest time. That was their most creative time. So I think the movie would be not necessarily so much as akin to Star Wars, but I understand the analogy. I think it'd be more like this is their generation's E.T.
That's a good,
I think that's a little closer to it. Again, not to nitpick you to death or anything like that, but I think it's going to be closer to E.T. Yeah. Star Wars is a little something else, but it's going to have the same impact.
Agree. And because merchandising, Stranger Things, trust me, you go out Walmart, it's got a ton of merchandise.
Oh,
but
for sure.
It's nothing like Star Wars was and stuff. And that's fair. I can, but like from what I've been told, shocked to people, I wasn't born when E.T. came out. E.T. had a very comparative amount of product around the world. So I see that analogy. I just think
the kids, the bicycles, getting into
bingo, which it's also homaging.
Right. I mean, it's a combination of E.T. and Goonies and old 80s horror and things like that.
Yeah.
It's basically hitting every generation where they live right in their pocketbook.
Yeah.
Netflix has really been able to meter out and put money into this, doing it really smartly. The marketing on it's been smart. The gearing it towards all audiences has been really smart. It could have been a niche series, but it has such broad appeal because of the young stars, because of the storytelling elements that come from the 80s, from the visuals that just light up a screen. It really is a show that hits on every cylinder for every demographic at this point. Yep. And that's why it's just gotten as huge as it has.
And what this show does, because to this point, how many products have we seen? We complain about this a lot, actually, where they try to do too much. They're trying to please everyone, and they drop every plate. I was saying this show is a master of spinning plates to where even though I'm here for the monsters and the horror elements, when they're doing the romance, the spy stuff, I'm not completely bored. I'm just like, okay, it's done well, but I kind of want to see what the monsters are doing still. But, this is building up the characters, so I'm not hating it. Every other thing's usually movies when they do this. Yeah. I'm usually bored to tears until they get back to what I care about. So I suspect this it's an uptrend. And I really like this show right now. Just like this is, in my opinion, where Game of Thrones was kind of famously season 6 and 7, which I was a huge fan of that show. The only thing stopping this show from being a classic that's going to be remembered for hundreds plus of years is its own ending. Like, if it can stick the landing, I think I'm calling now it's going to be the next big franchise. Like, it already is. I'm saying it's going to be Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, E.T. level, where people are still talking about it to this day. People still are finding Lord of the Rings and becoming in love with it. Although it's the 80s properties that everyone still loves. Ghostbusters, gonna mildly put Star Wars in the 80s, 77, but you know what I mean? That kind of 30-year, 25-plus year era, man, we got some franchises out of that era that are still being coal mined to this day. And
Sure.
I mean, even Stranger Things is doing it, so we'll see. But I loved it. I thought it was very good.
We'll see. I think the thing that I want to see is I want to see somebody do something different. Okay, we've done the 80s, we've done the 70s. Can we go, like George Lucas went to the future with this whole thing, but he said it was a story told a long, long time ago, right? And and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like, great, we can do 80s all day long. Eventually, it will become a trope. It is becoming a trope.
Oh, it already is,
but when it's done well, it's still nice. We still like it. But again, I'm holding out for the writers out there. For all you writers out there, I know y'all got more stuff than this. That you're not just copying what was already done. I know there's some people out there with some original ideas. And so if you're a writer and you're getting stuff done, please keep pushing it. We need to see your stuff. I do not want to see the next version of Steven Spielberg, but somebody else who's copying Steven Spielberg. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see anybody trying to do their version of Scorsese. I want to see someone just say, you know what, here's an idea. Instead of just doing this and this and this, why don't we just go this?
Yeah.
And then just explore it, right? If you do a movie about tube socks, I'll probably go watch it because there's not a movie about that right now. And you don't go to the 80s of the tube socks. There's plenty of tube socks now. But if you do something, creative folks out there, please write something and please keep pushing and get your agents to get this out here. Because, again, I don't want to see more revamps, right? Because I know we can do better. I know we can do more. Zach, you and I went and saw a movie together. We got together on a Thursday. Woo, and we went to the matinee. And we had to get in our bonding time. We hadn't hung out in a minute or two. So we went and we saw Black Phone. I'll let you kick it off, sir.
No, man, you go ahead. I want to get your take on this first.
Okay, yeah. So Black Phone, yes. So you've got Ethan Hawke here, who is Derrickson's one of his favorite guys because he used him in Sinister as well. So you have Ethan Hawke, this kid named Mason Thames, who's the lead actor in this thing, and he actually does a great job. I kept thinking of him and Wolfhart, the other kid, right? And I thought, man, this kid's doing a great job on his own. And then Madeline McGraw, who plays his sister, Gwynny. So he's Finney and she's Gwynny, right? So I thought that was kind of neat. And then, of course, the director is Scott Derrickson. And then you have guys like James Ransom in this. And then the dad was played by Jeremy Davies, right? So this is a film, again, I like the idea that it's taken from a book from Stephen King's son, who goes under a different pen name, so he doesn't.
Joe Hill.
Joe Hill, you're right there on it. And I'm pretty sure the book is probably really good as well, because the books usually are. But what I love here is that this film goes back, homages, it's in the 70s, but it's not trying to beat you over the head that it's 70s. You just get the sense this is just the time capsule we're in. So you get this idea of this grabber, this guy who's a child molester and more, and kills them and murders them, does all this stuff, and the police can't seem to figure out who this guy is, but he's picking off kids in a certain little area. And these kids, it's basically seen through their eyes. So you see them looking at all the posters of kids who are missing and stuff like that, and they know the kids. And they're talking about it, and they're going, do you think it's real? Do you think they'll ever show up again? So it's the debate of, they're just missing. That doesn't mean they're dead. So do you think they're alive? Do you think so they play a little bit of that, but I love the character development. Like, you care about Finney and Gwynny. You really do. And they don't waste too much time, I felt, trying to really overburden you with just a bunch of stuff you don't need. They give you exactly the tone and the feel of the 70s, because remember, we had a lot of abductors and people that were doing that to children. Remember, they had one in Atlanta. They had one in Denver as well. So I think that was an homage to that. I think that's what Joe Hill was trying to pull in. So from a movie perspective, I think its first act is solid. I love the second act. It doesn't detract. And then by the time you get to the third act, you're like, all right, brother, bring this home, Scott Derrickson. And you're just kind of going, that was easy. That was easy. That was easy. Wow, that was really easy. And you're kind of like, because it did such a great job in the beginning and it set up the right tones. The actors here are great. I like the cut scenes. And again, This is a film where if you're looking for a lot of gore and a lot of all that stuff, you're not going to get it. There's only 3 jump scares, but they're used well. I love the fact that they didn't overdo the jump scares thing over stupid stuff. And I like the fact that there's a brother-sister element between these 2 kids that you go, man, I buy that. Okay, Zach, what did you think?
All right. So yeah, like I said, I too went to go check out Black Phone. Checking out the movie, I got afraid. I was a little fearful on this going into it because I didn't want it to be like where you felt the time period was pushed on you, or like Stranger Things of the '80s being pushed on you.
That's fair, yeah.
It was. This one needed to be told in the '70s time period that it was. It was absolutely necessary to the plot. You definitely get great chemistry between the actors. Ethan Hawke is absolutely terrifying. Having to do a lot of mask work and a lot of stuff behind where you don't see his mouth, or you don't see his entire face. You just get kind of traces on it. Again, like you said, the filming on it is really masterful in the fact that a lot of it is shot from the child's height, from the child's perspective. You're also getting dialogue that's realistic to the time period, which was really, really important. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's really kind of just apropos for the time period that this film is in. I get a little bored with that bleak gray color palette that's in every horror movie now. The score is nothing inventive. It's just basically there. Like, again, just sharp synthesizer tones. That part feels like every other horror movie. But this, like you said, good solid first 2 acts. First solid going in. Third act is just, it was far too easy. It really felt like there was about 20 minutes left on the editing room floor that really could have been left in. But the thing that I said to you, and this was a discussion we had outside the theater, is that it's not necessarily a film for our generation. This is a horror movie for a younger generation. And it's a good horror movie for a younger generation. Yeah. You don't necessarily see what happens to the kids, but you do see that there is something bad that happens. You get that sense. It really has a great sense of tone, and it's an interesting watch. But like I said, it's a film not necessarily for our generation, even though we can appreciate it for what it was because of the time period. But handing it off to another generation and say this is a horror movie for you, yeah. This is a horror movie, like the 12 to 14 to 16-year-old kid can go in with, parents who are going to let them watch that and be scared and impressed.
So, quick question then, K-Zach. That's a generation. Remember, we're 2 different generations here.
Yes.
Y'all are Gen Z? Or
Gen X.
Gen X. You're Gen X. That's right. Gen Z is behind me. I'm millennial. Right. So you mean more towards me millennial generation wise, or are you saying like age wise it's a different
age wise? I would say that anyone coming out of high school right now, going into college right now, it's a perfect horror movie for them.
Okay. And my other follow-up question was, I've had a theory, and I'm curious if this might be a KZAC question. With horror movies now, I have noticed a lot of period horror movies, a lot. Now, my theory is because by making it a period piece, you get around a lot of tropes. Like, why doesn't anyone call a cell phone? Why does anyone, run away because they've seen horror movies? Well, if it takes place in the 50s or 70s, they wouldn't have that context. So I was curious, in older horror movies, or at least when the 80s and 70s, kind of when y'all were seeing more of these horror movies, were those horror movies set more in the 50s and 40s, or is just more of a new trend setting horror movies and period pieces? Or has it always been there?
It's kind of hard to say because the horror movies that we watch are really more statements at the time.
Yeah.
But but the horror movies that have been coming out lately that have been more successful are not necessarily horror movies because the kids have kind of learned their lesson. I mean, if anything, you're getting stuff like Bodies. That's been more horror. Like I said, for it to be kind of a broad appeal for all generations, we kind of have to go back to those times because, again, you're right. It gives you a way to ride around a lot of things that would have, that kids today would be smarter than.
Yep.
Talking to strangers, getting in the vans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily. I would say it is kind of a newer trend, but by the same token, when you get into the classics and the fundamentals, stuff like Halloween, Psycho, things like that, they're statements of the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is because we kind of live in a world where we're sort of learning from history lessons. We're really able to kind of go back and say, okay, I have this at my fingertips, and I understand why this happens here, why these events happen here. So, I wouldn't call it a trend. I would call it more a statement on what today is, and this film will be over in 10 minutes if some kid had called a cell phone.
Yeah, my beautiful Friday the 13th ends right then and there. So when anyone has a cell phone,
and I think the other part of it is they got to get more creative, because there are things that are absolutely horrifying today, but nobody's touching it. Everybody just wants to go to quick jump scare movies, and movies that either have zombies or Dracula, vampires in it,
or comic books that were written 20 years ago that are the only basis for storylines right now.
Correct. And so I'm thinking, for the next generation of horror movies, there's a lot of things that are absolutely horrible today that we could talk about, but we haven't seen that next level of writing go there. We seem to be stuck on just haunted house movies and vampires and zombies and outbreaks.
Or we're getting weird neo-political stuff like The Purge, or what was that one that came out about 3 years ago, where The Hunt.
The Hunt. And that's more of and I enjoyed it, but to his point, that movie doesn't exist in any other generation outside of this exact. Yeah. And it's a comedy, but it doesn't. It's not going to be timeless.
And a lot of people didn't go to see it because of the statements that it was making. Yep. So it's kind of, if you put that out there, you're really taking that risk, and theaters don't take risks these days.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
And we're going to get right into that when we get into our segment, which we probably ought to get rolling on.
Yeah, we need to get on.
We need to get going.
Yeah,
sorry about that, guys.
Let's move. All right, guys, let's go. I'm ready to talk about the topic. I'm not here to talk about what I've seen, because I'll bore you guys with that, right? So now that you guys are watching and you're waiting for us to drag on, the topic today, we are looking at the best movies of 2022 so far, or we could say it this way, the way we like to say it here is, what are the most enjoyable movies, right? There's that wiki. So we were tasked with looking at 3 movies that we think are really, really good watches, very enjoyable so far in 2022. Unfortunately, we didn't have a whole lot, but there's still some, and so we're going to kick it off with Horror Mike.
All right, my number 3 on my list of 3 is 3 of 3. It's gonna be very funny because I know my friends here, and they this wouldn't be a movie they would ever see in a million years, but I loved it. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I am so impressed by this little franchise. As a fan of the video games and the character, I was just kind of seeing it. I've always liked this character. But the first movie was a solid little movie. It does, everything right. And if anything, I like the character, and I love kind of comedic Jim Carrey, which we hadn't really had in a few years. Mm-hmm. You get to this movie, a stronger story. You get Idris Elba playing one of the characters, Knuckles. He's very good in the role. And you get more Jim Carrey. I think this is another good sign of things to come, because I feel there's going to be a lot of young kids seeing this movie and just seeing a strong, solid movie that's going to be kind of good for the next generation. The movie just kind of does, sadly, what I feel is the bare minimum for films. Well-paced, got some fun acting. It looks like everyone on there, James Marsden, Jim Carrey, they're all having fun. Mm-hmm. It's got a good message about family.
Okay.
I really have very little ill will to say about this movie outside of, I can see what I'm saying from y'all's point of view. Like, it's a movie about an anthropomorphic blue hedgehog. Mm-hmm. That's fair. But it's just a strong, solid movie. This is another one of those movies I'll add to the list of movies one day PJ will be forced to watch on an airplane. It will begrudgingly be like, hey, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So that's my number 3. I really walked out of this theater with a smile on my face. Yeah. There was never a point in the movie where I was like, this was bad, or I would have done that differently. Just enjoyed it. Just funny, laugh, good time, I would have gladly taken the whole family to see it. And I think everyone would have had a good time walking out.
Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog. That's all right. Okay. All right. We'll have to, maybe one day just happen to come on TV or something on.
Yeah, you'll be
streaming.
stuck on that airplane. It's on my list. I've got like 3 movies. PJ's gonna be forced. He'll never watch in a million years. He's gonna be forced to watch on an airplane. That he's gonna begrudgingly accept. Pretty solid. Not bad.
Not bad. I won't tell Mike that, but yeah, not too bad.
I think half our audience will probably see it because of kids.
Yeah.
But I think when they see it, I think a lot of people walk away. It's like, oh, I didn't like want to rip my eyes out because I was just so bored.
Yeah, it wasn't like Minions.
Yeah, this is not like me. Oh God, never. That's gonna be. We're gonna talk about that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my number 3.
Love it, Kazak. You.
All right. So my number 3 here. Me. All right. My number 3. I feel PJ will look upon me in disappointment, but Mike, I think, will probably shake his head in agreement. And that's going to be Doctor Strange Across the Multiverse of Madness. I knew that was coming. Yeah. This one, I went to see it in the theater for 2 words: Sam Raimi.
Yep.
It's a solid Sam Raimi film all the way down.
Damn, Sam.
The combat in it is all right. The appearances are something of a surprise if you're not really expecting to. If you go in without knowing who's coming, it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable as a Sam Raimi film. As far as a Marvel film, it's not necessarily their strongest, but the effects are something of a trip. Again, Scott Derrickson had the first one. Sam Raimi gets the second one. The second one gets into some horror stuff, and it really does well. I enjoy Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch and the baddie in this one, and enjoying kind of where they were able to go with the story on screen. And like I said, the story it's about a B/C+ level, but the horror film aspect of it, it's a B+, A-. As a Sam Raimi fan, I was glad to see him kind of come back to form after years and years and years of not getting horror out of him. We had the last good horror film he did was Dragon to Hell. The last, and of course, he got done dirty with Spider-Man 3. So I was interested to give him a take on a comic book movie one more time. And this, I thought, paid off. I enjoyed it. I dug it, and I'd recommend it because if you're a Sam Raimi fan.
And that's where I'm right in the middle, probably between you guys, because we talked about this months ago when the movie came out with Kazak. And my problem was the Sam Raimi parts, which are very clear to see. If you know Sam Raimi, if you're a fellow fan, you're going to see every trope. He puts everything. I'm shocked they let him do what he does. The problem was, I feel, and I'm going to definitely touch on this in our last segment, but Marvel held him back. I think the worst parts of that movie are what feel like studio mandates, because they feel like things Raimi has. I'm going to attribute them to studio mandates because I have over 40 years of cinema of Sam Raimi. So I know how the guy films. He doesn't really change his style. Nope. So when I watch this movie, and I'm like, yeah, that's not things Sam Raimi. I'm going to attribute it to things, but it is things that Marvel Studios does. I attribute the worst parts of that movie to Marvel Studios.
That's the C+ part of it.
Yeah, and it really hurts to me. That's what made me. I walked out somewhat enjoying it, but boy was I annoyed. I was very annoyed by it. But I agree. I think it was enjoyable as a Raimi fan.
These are 3 films that are the most enjoyable for 2022, and
awesome.
The best we can say is that's pretty good.
What does that tell us already? But yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead then with my number 3. I'm gonna go ahead and gush a little bit more on the Black Phone, because the more after I thought about it, here's what I really, really enjoyed that I didn't already say in the first part. Number 1, I like that it's heads up. Here's what I mean by heads up. You walk around outside today, everybody's heads down and they're on their phone. They don't see anybody. They don't talk to anybody, nothing. One of the things that hit me, since it's the 70s, obviously no cell phones, the heads up. And I'm like, wow, I remember when life used to be like that. So when one of the guys is on his bike, Bruce, a baseball player, he's just rolling on his bike and he's got his head up and the wind's blowing and he sees 2 girls from his school and they're like, hi, Bruce. And he's like, yeah. Right? And all this is by him enjoying everything he sees while he's riding on his bike. It's heads up. There's nobody looking down. There's nobody. Everybody's heads up, and they want to see. I want to experience what's happening around me. And then, great by Derrickson, here comes that black van that rolls into the corner. And you already know, since it's a black van, okay, that's got to be where the grabbers in. And that's all they do. They just show you that, and then they pull. So again, another part about black film I love is I love villains. You know, I love villains.
Of course,
and
yeah.
Here, Ethan Hawke is perfect. But let me tell you why this is perfect here, because he doesn't try to act like Heath Ledger's Joker, which is like a Paul Dano knockoff on doing the Riddler. He doesn't try to act like I'm weird and I have to talk and say weird things and I have to. He isn't. He's a guy that they never give you his backstory. You never know how or why he became the grabber. You don't know that at all, which is perfect because that's like Heath Ledger's Joker. You don't know where he came from. Every time he tells a different story about how he got these scars and stuff, right?
Yep.
So I love the fact that he was watching that and he said, you know what? He doesn't have to have a backstory. He just is a dude with mental problems, perhaps, and some anger issues that he takes out on kids. And we don't have to go into any long story about what happened to him as a kid. We're just going to show him. So then Ethan Hawke now, another thing that they did great here is they said, all right, we're going to use a mask, but we're going to use several different pieces of the mask to show different expressions in at different times. Although he was emoting well through the mask, it would close up on his eyes to show you when his eyes were getting angry or whatever, or when he was actually getting sad, you could see his eyes water up, and they showed that. But his mask has a piece where there's a bottom piece, there's a top piece, there's a piece that's just here with the horns. It has all these different pieces to show the different moods of this guy. Because at some points he is kind of like, I'm just talking reason with you, kid. You know, I can't tell you stuff because you don't need to know. You're only 13, but yeah, this makes sense for me. And you're kind of watching him kind of getting bought in a little bit. And then when he is a little eccentric, it isn't like he's doing the Heath Ledger thing. He's not doing that. Look how weird I am because I'm so. It isn't that at all. It's just, I am.
Yeah, it's controlled chaos energy.
Yes.
And Scott Derrickson gets that very much out of Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I would say with that, then this movie, because it was a tie, I was thinking, should I put the Batman on here or should I do Black Phone? And I figured, well, I'll let someone else do the Batman. So there's that segue for that. And instead, I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about the movie that I thought had so much promise, that was doing a lot of things right. It just needed that same energy in the third act that it had in the first and second.
And as a quick before I transition to mine, you mentioned, I knew his name. I'm a big Joe Hill fan. I'm a big Stephen King fan. Okay. And I remember reading Joe Hill. I was like, man, this guy has Stephen King energy. And I'm actually his son. I just didn't want people to give me preferred treatment. That's why he went by the pen name Joe Hill, so people wouldn't give him preferred treatment. And I was like, well, that all tracks. So I was a fan of you. Love Joe Hill. So to hear that I didn't know he helped with the writing of it. That's huge for me. So very excited to see that movie.
Yeah, no, it's very solid.
So I guess we'll go into my number two. As Vega spoiled it for me. Oh, guys, was the Batman. We did a whole great, really fun, awesome show about this one. See,
we did.
Probably put a link in the description where they usually point around somewhere. This movie, we've set our piece about it. Again, we have a great episode about it. So I'll just say the boiler points is, I think the movie's very, very, very good. And I think when I re-listened to our post was what we kept saying is it could have been one of the best of the best. Right now, it's just pretty damn good. And I think that's kind of what got under our skin. We saw the great movie just under the surface. I'm still calling it the next movie, the sequel to this, potentially could be the next Dark Knight. It has the potential based on what I've seen, the foundation here. I liked it. I think this is a good trend for superhero films. And again, the usual bit, he's not a superhero really, but you know what I mean. This is a good trend. I'm so done with schlock, the Marvel style method of storytelling where you're holding down great creatives like Sam Raimi. It's good to see the creativity in this film, and it was a breath of fresh air. I love Sonic because it's reminding me of how good movies can be at their base level. This movie shows me there is a way forward for superhero movies. It's a little bit original, a little bit. I think they were just kind of testing the waters right now. I think if they really lean into this, the next of this one is going to be potentially, again, the next Dark Knight. And I'm excited to be there. We've set our piece on this one, so I'll definitely move on. But this was my most enjoyable this year.
I hope so. I hope that they get the right lesson out of it. With the Batman, I think just to the simple point was just doing the detectives because we hadn't done it before, because Nolan didn't do it, isn't good enough. And I thought the character choices on some of it, to have him act like Anakin Skywalker, basically to Alfred, I just felt like that. that doesn't go anywhere that's interesting and unique, because the only place that can go is, oh, and now he flipped his tune, and now he likes Alfred again. Oh, but Alfred gets killed in this episode, so he's now even more angry because he didn't enjoy him when he was. I'm like, you don't have to do all that. I think my best thing for this movie, like you said, it was almost the greatest. They should have showed the relationship between Gordon and Batman, because why does Gordon trust him when nobody else does?
There has to be a
He's the
reason.
one and so if they'd have just given us something about that, that would have probably, and then stayed away from the whole Anakin thing, acting whiny crybaby Bruce Wayne. Nobody wants to see that Bruce Wayne. Nobody does. It's different. You could try it, sure, but does anybody really want to see him act like that at the age of the late 20s, early 30s?
And I forget the director's name. I hope he does listen to the criticisms. Yes. I mean, he's smart enough that I think he did. I think he's going to look at the criticism, reconfigure with his crew, and I think that's why I'm more excited, because he doesn't seem like the kind of director you kind of get that's just like, he doesn't seem like a studio director, nor does he seem like a very Stanley Kubrick, doesn't listen to anybody. He's going to do his vision. He seems like, hearing his interviews, hearing the guy, this looks like a guy who's going to look at what worked, what didn't, and that's why I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully you're right. I'd rather you be right than me be right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Zach.
All right, so I'm just going to skip over that and any knowledge of that, because I hated the film. I just did. I just did.
Understood.
You can see that in our archives.
Yep.
So my number 2 was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Very
my
good.
God. This, when PJ taught you, hit it on movies being an event. This is an event film. This is a film that you go in and you are immersed in this film. It is so much movie. I mean, it is a lot to take in.
Okay.
I'm anxious actually to see it again, just to see more of what I didn't see the first time.
They pack a ton. It's got a lot in it. It almost feels like Stranger Things. It balances. It spins a lot of plates. I apologize. I didn't mean to step on your toes, kid. I just think it does so much that has to be acknowledged. And it sounded like you were gonna say it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, visually it's gorgeous. The performances are amazing. The writing on it is, it's deeply personal and intense. It's just so much film, and the fact is that it deserved to be seen on a big screen. It really deserved that silver screen time. It's something that you've never seen before. And you're getting, so much, great and weird energy from the film. It is a long film, but man, is it worth watching. And it is worth actually paying attention to and watching. I honestly look forward to seeing this one again. I look forward to seeing more from the crew who made it, Daniels. I really enjoyed this one, and it's things that I love about going to see movies in a theater.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's so much visual to take in. There's a lot of visual beauty. There's some great fight scenes. There's just weird energy from it, and it's really fantastic to check out. I cannot recommend seeing this one in a theater enough, because it really is worth seeing on a big screen.
Okay. I'm into that. Well, that's funny, because that's a perfect segue into the one that I would say that you have to see in the big screen, which is Maverick. Yeah. So, again, this is the box office supremacy. This film has it. We'll hold on to it. It will knock everything else out that tries to come out and try to pretend. And that Elvis, that means you're in trouble. And so, yes, here it is. And I was super surprised, because this right here, this movie is why we go to the big screen, to get thrilled, titillated. Yes, the storyline is basic, but, storylines don't have to be super intricate in order to be interesting. They just have to be executed well. And that is done here. So when you take Tom Cruise, when you take Miles Teller, you take Val Kilmer coming back in a role that he had played before. You see Glenn Powell coming in as kind of the new jerk guy. He's the new Iceman, if you will. He's Hangman. Jennifer Connelly's back. John Hamm is the new just hard ass that's just not impressed with Tom Cruise at all. And here you go. You have this film that you don't have to be in the military to appreciate it. It's nothing like that at all. It is, you're Tom Cruise, you're a maverick. You're a badass. But just because you're a badass doesn't mean you know how to teach how to be a badass to other people. Yet he's in charge of the next badass, the next generation of them, and he's got to teach them about a certain flight that they have to do that's only happened one time before. One person did it, and it was Maverick, and he almost died pulling it off. So They're either going to have to get crushed in this Tet Offensive and do it the way John Hamm wants to do it, or Tom Cruise is going to have to pull out the best teacher in him, and though he's not a Ben Kenobi type, he's not a Yoda type. He is the guy that just wants to come in, kick ass, take names, kiss the girls, and then leave.
Yep.
But here he is thrusted with these kids, and then perfect homage with Val Kilmer, right? They don't hide from the fact that he's got the health issues. They actually put that right into the movie, which is why he has to go see his good buddy, who's the only person standing up for him when John Hamm and them want to get him out of the military. They want to kick him off the steel and then get rid of all of his benefits and everything just because they hate him. They hate that he won't bend to the corporate style, the military style. He has to be Maverick. But at the same time, he still has to get structure, though, because you got to teach these kids. And you need a structure whenever you're teaching somebody something. You just can't say, do this, and they'll do it. So you have that wonderful tear-up piece in it, but then you have the action, and the action, there's more action in this one than the first one. In fact, I like this movie better than the first one. Now, nostalgia berries are going to make other people go, you're crazy, Bomber, you can't say that. No, pound for pound, put them up next to each other and see how well Top Gun ages compared to this one.
Yeah.
So Tom Cruise comes on before the movie, at least in our theater he did, and he said, yeah, it took us 10 years to get these aerial fights right. He goes, these aren't CGI. These are real aerial fights. There's like maybe 2 scenes where they had to add a little background stuff because of some explosions, but this is real aerial dogfights, and you believe it. When you see people getting in there and their eyes are rolling back because of the G-force as they try to pull that plane up, you feel every bit of it. It makes you feel it like the way Ford versus Ferrari makes you feel like you're sitting inside a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Or sitting inside that Ford GT super fast car, right? Here, this is the airplane version of it, and they can do more and they can go faster. And then the jokes, they're placed at the right place. There's only maybe 1 or 2 homages. They didn't homage this to death, Force Awakens, I'm thinking about you, right? Yeah. They just said, here's enough. Now here's the story. And then they just let the action take over. So Maverick is one you definitely want to see in the theater. You know, if it goes to the dollar theater, if it's a money thing, then, but still see it in the theater. You won't get the same out of it if you just watch it at home on your regular screen. Although you may have a nice digital 4K TV, still not silver screen and still not the effects of that surround sound.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go seeing this one this week. Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Yes, sir.
Because of the nature of how we're probably going to do our number ones, you want to do KX number 1?
Yeah, go ahead,
KZ. KZ, you go to your number 1 and we'll...
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my number 1 favorite film so far this year. Let me get my camera there. My favorite film so far this year has been one that the Film Samurai recommended and one I was glad to see as well, and that was X.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. A lovely little horror film. Again, small cast, not necessarily big budget, but, man, it's brutal. It's intense. It was fun. It was fun to watch. It was fun. It looked like it was fun to shoot. The cast is, not necessarily likable, but likable in the good way. Not likable in the good way because, man, just everyone is terrible in this movie, and terrible things happen. But the way it's put together, Ty West does a masterful job in not only capturing period, but also just getting horror right. I was glad to pay full price for this one, and it was such a wonderful payoff. The whole film, all the way down, is what horror I feel horror that I like. It's got gore, it's got great kills, it's got some terrific makeup, it's got some surprise twists in there, and I really cannot wait for the follow-up, which was shot concurrently with the film to come out, called Pearl. I simply cannot wait for this one. It was a good time watching horror in a theater, and that's what I go in for, man.
X was great. I think I wasn't as excited about, because I actually loved it until because they basically have the second movie coming out that's set up called Pearl. At the very end of the film, they're like, okay, this was the part 1. I almost felt a little deflated because I was like, well, I wish you had told me this was a 2-part movie. Now I feel almost obligated to see this next one. I am. I'm just saying that that I didn't get that feeling that you did, KZat, because the whole rest of the movie we agree 100% on. I just think that kind of set up for a prequel. I don't know how I feel yet, but I trust Ty West. He knocked it out of the park on this. This was a lot of fun, and we were discussing before the show, man, you're not seeing a lot of horror in theaters right now. A lot of it's on the streaming services. It's good to see a fairly big budget, or at least seemingly look big budget, horror film. It looks great, like it's $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't push the budget down your throat.
Yes, that's fair. I like that. Okay, that's like that.
Basically, the way it's shot, the way it's done, it feels gritty, it feels dirty, and man, is it satisfying.
Yeah, it's the movie itself. My only problems are like meta problems, and just I don't know how I feel about walk out. I was like, all right, now if you want to know why some of these events happen, you gotta go see the next part. And I'm like, okay, I'll show up, but I'm not sure how much I like that yet. But yeah, I agree.
I'm interested in just see the monsters, how they became the monsters. That's the reason to go.
And I'm always in the middle ground of that because I was not a big fan of the xenomorphs getting an origin. I'm like, sometimes you just need a scary thing being scary. Just depends. Like, so I'm torn, but we'll see. I'm gonna definitely be there when it premieres.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
that works for me. I haven't seen this. When you said X at first, I said, "What? They did a sequel to Malcolm X and didn't tell me." I was getting ready to get upset, but I'm glad it's a horror film, so that makes it work for me. Well, you're right, Mike. We ended up picking the same movie for number one because it deserves to be number one out of all the movies thus far. Here we are, July 3rd, right, the day before 4th of July. The movie that we're going to discuss now is The Northman. It's both of our number ones.
Yes.
And so, Mike, just tell the people, what was it about it that did it for you when you watched this film?
So it's been a minute since a movie hit from teaser. I remember at my store, I sat down PJ and I was like, you gotta see this. You gotta look at this new movie coming down the pipeline. I showed, because we were actually just weeks before saying there's not even really sword and sandal like action adventure movies. Mm-hmm. And I showed him that, and I was blown away. He was blown away. We were blown away so much we were like, okay, this is almost too good to be true. We surely this movie can't be as strong as it looks. Mm-hmm. It comes out swinging. This movie is out. That's not even a pun. This movie is outstanding. It's a story. I forget their names right now. I haven't seen it in a few months. Prince Emily, and
it's played by Alexander Skarsgård. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the girlfriend Olga, and then Nicole Kidman's in it as his mother.
And this is
Ethan Hawke is in there.
Another Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, as the king.
That's that sign of like dad. Quality, man. When you see that the Hawke brand. He's exiled, learns to be like a Viking and a warrior, and finds out that this person who exiled him, this king who exiled him, still has his mother, and his uncle still has his mother, and he goes back to kind of get vengeance and reclaim his birthright. Mm-hmm. What a powerful film. Mm-hmm. I've actually got no problems with this film. My many problems with the film is a meta of it makes me angry, actually angry. Hollywood was given this gift and they squandered it. As we know, the movie did not do well. And it's all on Hollywood. They mismarketed it. Mm-hmm. They gave it too much money, which he uses every cent of it. I don't think, again, the movie is 9.5 out of 10 for me. Like I have very few problems with the film itself. It just makes me sad that this movie should have been the biggest movie of the last few years, and either people haven't heard of it or they just heard about it not doing well. And I hate that that's the message that Hollywood gets from this, that when you get a strong, artistic, and it's not really changing the game. It's not really doing anything amazing. It's just doing everything really, really, really well. I've seen a lot of these elements in other movies, but never as well as this movie did it.
Yeah.
And like I've seen 300 do some of these things. I've seen other sword and sandal. I think the only movie I can say does what this movie does and better is still Gladiator. Gladiator is still, to me, a borderline perfect film. And this movie came so close. I love it. So, guys, you need to see The Northman. The only person I wouldn't recommend it to is if you're a bit squeamish about action sequences, because it doesn't hold back. These are Vikings. Like, these guys are blood. They're cutting through villages. That's the only person I wouldn't recommend it to if they get squeamish around that. Yeah. I think this movie is for everyone.
Well, and I would say that I think the film does do a little something different, because 300, if you go back and remember 300 very well, it's a great story, but some of the fanciful. I can't even say this.
Fanciful.
Right? Yeah, some of those scenes were too cartoonish and totally taken from the comic book, which is what he had done it from. Yeah. So I actually like this visualization better. I agree. The way they did this, the way Robert Eggers, because this is the guy who did Mank and The Witch.
Yeah.
I'm not the Mank. Sorry. The tower, the lighthouse,
The Lighthouse and the Witch.
the White Lighthouse and the Witch, and now we get the Northman. So, out of those three movies, this one's my favorite. The Witch is still great, and he uses Anna Taylor-Joy in that movie as well. The Lighthouse is one I know that Film Samurai loved to death. Thought it was great. It was very claustrophobic. It's not a film I can watch.
I respect it. I think I saw it and I was like, this is a great film. This is definitely not a film for me. But I could see, you know what? No, this is good. Just I don't see myself watching this ever again.
Yeah. And it's definitely one of those films. But this film, again, you have I love it because it strips you away from all the Marvel stuff, all the Jurassic World stuff, all the sequel baiting stuff. It gets rid of all that and says, we're going to tell you a story and put you in this spot, which is a very simple revenge tale. It's all it is, very simple. However, the way that it's shot, a boy is getting close to his dad, played by, Ethan Hawke, and his dad's telling him, this is going to be your kingdom one day, son. And they show you him being a boy and running out there in the snow and trying to catch it on his tongue and all this stuff. And then it's juxtaposed real quickly by an uncle who rides in and kills his dad in front of him. Yeah. And then he has to leave. So this is a great setup. Now, where people maybe get lost is somewhere in the middle of the film, because the middle of the film is really showing you Viking lore. It's showing you rituals, father and son rituals, when they're getting on their knees and doing this stuff. And Willem Dafoe is also in this. I forgot that. He's great as the jester type guy. He's very serious. And Bjork's in it as well. I forgot about her. And she plays a great seer that's able to help him reconnect to the things his dad told him before he died. So you have this wonderful landscape of shooting what's supposed to be Iceland and all the Slavic countries. And then you see this boy, and you want to see him grow up. You want to see him get like a berserker, because look at all the pain he's suffered already. In one moment, he's being told, you're going to have a kingdom, son, and it's all yours. And then next thing you know, nope, dad is dead, and your uncle's taking your mom, and everything else is getting crazy. So you watch him train, and you see that anger and the hate that he has in his face when he's just rowing the boat. And they show you that very first scene that made it into the trailer, where he catches that sphere, turns around and chunks it right back.
Amazing shot.
And
Love that
aces that guy, right? And that's what you want to see, because you want to see wrong get righted. Even though they're going in and they're killing people and they're taking slaves and doing this sort of thing, but you understand why Amleth is doing it. Mm-hmm. And then the idea of just cutting his hair and wanting to be a slave to get closer to, because he found out his uncle took over and then ran his dad's kingdom into the ground to where now
almost literally,
yeah. And so he comes back, and so when you see him, you're just like, oh, get him, and you see all the different attempts where he's about to go in and get him, but he has to wait. Mm-hmm. He's about to go get him this time, but he has to wait. And then just all the other fanciful things that you see, him seeing Bjork and seeing this other seer tell him about where this weapon is that he can get and all this stuff. I don't know. I was like, man, this is what I want, because there was no wasted moments. There's no jokes that are poorly timed. And the cinematography was excellent. It made me feel like I was in 100%. Iceland or in a Slavic countryside. Mm-hmm. I felt it, and I felt why he was so angry.
Yeah. And I feel like it makes me scared. I don't think we're going to get more of this. It just didn't. It just did so. I love looking at Hollywood trends and marketing and box office. I literally read Hollywood Reporter every day, and I'm afraid. I mean, I get another movie like this because it just didn't do what Hollywood wanted because of their mismanagement. I want more of this, and I'm afraid of not getting it because of them. Like, people just didn't know about it. Like, there's a lot of people who just never knew this film existed, and I was like, that's insane to me, considering how good this movie is. I really, again, having not seen Maverick, I don't think it's even close. And I really like the Batman and even Sonic, but I don't even think it's a fair fight. Like, this movie was really good. Like, this movie and The Last Duel have probably been my favorite movies the last couple of years, in recent times. And for me, it's kind of not close for any other movies. It's those two and then everything else.
Yeah.
So
no, it's very good. And speaking of Maverick had a budget of $170 million. It's now $1 billion.
Oh yeah,
so
it just cracked it. Yep.
So Maverick definitely deserves that. So while we've talked about these films, and these are the films that we would tell you to go out and watch if you haven't watched them, buy them if so, because I think these are really good films. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about what the hell, and you can miss me with this type of movies that have been released or they're thinking about releasing or are about to release. So as we look at our second topic today, we're just going to give at least one film this year that we're just kind of like, You know, we're just kind of like,
Yeah, we're done.
yeah, I guess somebody pitched this. I guess somebody put some money behind it, but I'm not gonna go see this trash, or I have no desire. So,
Yep.
Mike, once again with you, what's a movie you could have missed this year?
Absolutely, it's gonna be Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay, which comes out next week.
It comes out next week, and I will not be there premiere. I don't like going to super premieres; they're too crowded. Everyone and their mom claps through every single joke. I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
I've become old man Mike, and I'm not a fan.
Get off my lawn.
And I'm not a fan of this jokey Thor.
Yeah, me either.
I am. It's not a minority, but it's like it almost feels like it's half now when I talk to people. I like the first Thor movie, but I'm not an idiot. That second one was abysmal, and there had to be changes. All right, so it's like, okay, I get there had to be changes. I'm not a big fan of the changes you made. I think Ragnarok is an okay movie with kind of dumb jokes, and I don't think comedic Thor works as well as a more dramatic Thor. Even in Avengers Infinity War, some of the best moments were a more dramatic Thor discussing his life. And I was like, this character works great.
Well, aggressive Thor. I want to see him aggressive, man.
You have two great options, and it felt like we went to this kind of goofy, himbo joke Thor. And it's just not for me, man. And we said before with Multiverse of Madness, Marvel is getting some of the top talent in Hollywood because they see the money, and that's obviously an easy paycheck for these guys, but they're holding them back. Like, if you had just walked away from Multiverse of Madness, that could have been one of the top Marvel movies, or at least one of the most fun Marvel movies. And everyone's like, Taika Waititi that. You think they're going to let Taika Waititi go what he did with Jojo Rabbit? Like, I've seen what Taika Waititi do. He is an amazing director. I didn't see it in Thor Ragnarok, and I'm really not seeing it in the trailers I'm seeing for this movie. I'm seeing all the Marvel tropes, all the setups for the next films.
Yeah.
I'm not excited, and yet everyone and their mom's gonna see this movie. It's gonna make $1 billion.
Yep.
And no lesson will be learned. We're not gonna get another Northman. We're gonna get more jokey jokes. And like I said, I'm gonna die on that hill. I think that first Thor movie is a pretty solid, strong movie.
Yeah, it's a good entry.
just
Kenneth Branagh, you bet.
Yeah, but then again, like I said, second movie was it was so bad. There had to be changes. I'm just not a fan of these changes.
See, and this is interesting that you had this movie because this piggybacks off of Northman. Thor should be Amleth.
Agree, 100%.
He should be vicious, angry. I mean, your family got destroyed. Ragnarok was turned into a comedy. That's not a comedy. That Ragnarok is supposed to be synonymous to Armageddon, right? So that's not supposed to be funny. Now, I get if you put a funny twist to it, is that creative? Yeah, I can give you creative all the time. But I like the lore. And when I have a lore, I like you to stick to that lore, or else we're just creating another character. And you should just use something else. You're just using the intellectual property of the popularity of it to push it somewhere else. When really Thor should be Gladiator, should be 300, should be Northman. He's not supposed to be funny. He's not supposed to be walking around. And neither is the Hulk, by the way. So I don't like what they've done to him either. They've nerfed him too. But I'm on that same thing with me. So with Love and Thunder, here's the sad part, right? It's almost like in Star Wars. One of the saddest things about the sequels was that we never saw the originals together on the screen. That was one of the saddest parts. With Thor, the saddest parts is the only time you really see Thor being Thor is in the first movie when he goes and he fights the Frost Giants, and at the end of Endgame, where he takes that axe and he pushes it right into Thanos' heart, trying to kill him. He says, "You will pay." And I'm like, listen, guys, that's Thor. He's angry, he's gay, he's a little angry, but this is a guy who's made for war. You don't carry around a big old heavy ass to be cutting jokes every 5 minutes. And, oh, look at me, and so I was always so frustrated with that. And so I reject it just on that premise. And that doesn't mean that people can't find this movie entertaining if you want to see, But I'm out on jokey Thor.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I agree. So that's my miss me. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. For me, we talked about it last week, and I'm going to say it again.
Please.
I've got no interest whatsoever in this new stupid Elvis movie. None.
You don't like Baz Luhrmann?
This over-stylized pseudo-bio rock pick of just of excess about music that literally should be a crime.
Yeah.
This is music that not even my dad dug. His brother dug it, because he grew up on Elvis, the ultimate rebel. But the fact is that it's just so much stylized pablum nonsense. There is nothing, I mean nothing, that I want to see in this film. Not the music, not the acting, not the over stylized, none of it. I want to see none of this on my screen. This is not for me. This is not for anyone I know. Even though I hear all this great praise for the actors and the visuals and things like that, it's not something I ever want to see.
That director, what's the director's name?
Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann. I always call him. I was about to say I do. I've heard this, and I think it's been summed up with him very well. He's a screensaver director. He makes things that if you just put on a screensaver, it looks amazing. If you cut off no sound, I think I like his visuals. But to your point, I don't think I really liked many of his movies.
What he does well.
Yep.
And it's nothing that I like.
There you go.
Nothing. I mean, that Romeo and Juliet is trash.
Did he do Moulin Rouge too, right?
Yes.
Yep. So that's the thing. I visually love his style.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of either. And I hate Moulin Rouge is one of the few musicals with Rent. I really dislike that.
You can respect the man's talent. You just don't have to enjoy the flicks.
Agreed.
That's more than fair.
Agree.
Like I said, give him all the flowers for costume design and cinematography. Fine. He picks that stuff well. It's just nothing that I want to see.
Yeah, well, I'll give him credit for this. He's going to be able to get. He's going to be the one person that's going to know how to get a certain demographic to the movies, and that's older white ladies.
He knows how
that's
to get.
Who's going to this.
He knows how to get that Oscar nomination. He absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every one of his movies gets like best cinematography and I'm sorry, at least gets nominated.
And it's deserved. There is nothing wrong with saying that at all. The man does well with what he does.
Yep.
And it's just nothing for me as a fan of certain films. It's just over stylized, over polished.
Yep.
It's rhinestone and glitz, and Elvis is perfect for that, and none of it I want to see. Whatsoever.
Because we've already heard the story of the person who started off in humble beginnings and didn't know if they had it or not, and then someone meets them and saw that they could make money off of them. Then they get them in the studio. Then they start to discover themselves, and then eventually they get involved in drugs because the weight of trying to get up on the stage and do a show. And,
access and exploitation.
We've heard it a million effing times. And so, I'm not interested. My mom wants to go see the film, so more than likely over the holiday weekend, that's probably what'll happen.
Oh, I'm
because when we
sorry.
pick the movies, and the other part that's weird about this, then thank you for that. It's that it's also 2.5 hours long.
Oh,
that's even worse. So Tom Hanks in prosthetics. And then this Austin kid, which, he's just going for a check, and he's just trying to do something, put his name on. So I can't fault him for that. But 2.5 hours of this?
That's every one of this guy's movies. I don't think he's ever made a traditional 90-minute movie. I think every movie he's done has been like minimum
I think Strictly
2 hours.
Ballroom might have been 90 minutes.
That's the closest one and only one, probably, yeah.
I don't think I've seen that. Name sounds familiar. I don't think I've seen it. I'm just like you. I'm not a big fan of the director. He's another one I just respect. I'm like, you know what? He's not bad, but boy, these movies are just the opposite of me.
He's a great talent. I just don't want to.
Sure. So I get that. And so the last one, and then we got to get on out of here. I've picked a movie that already did come out. If I'd have went with the trend with you guys, which y'all picked a movie that's about to come out, it'd probably be Black Panther 2, but that's a whole nother story. But I picked one that already did come out in 2022, and this movie is Morbius, because I'm just like, why? Why do we need this movie? But because, Spider-Man villains like Venom and all that seem to do well. Okay, now we got to make a Morbius film. So this is a film that I didn't go see because I was not going to go see it because I have friends who know my taste, and they went to go see it because Marvel Machine put out another character, right? This was done by Sony, and they pretty much said everything that I felt like the movie was going to be. They said that the acting was ridiculous. They said that the CGI was horrible whenever it was trying to morph from back and forth between regular face and monster face. I heard that so many things happen off camera. The logic of the story doesn't make sense. The characterization isn't any good either.
Yep.
And then it's just a film that starts to just roll and roll and goes faster and faster and faster. And it's almost like they're saying, we don't want you to think too long about it, so we're going to move and go to the next scene, and here's the next scene, and here's the next scene. And so, again, I was so glad I didn't see this film, and I hear it's one of the worst.
And
Did
I
you
was
see
going
it?
to see it. No, because here's what happened. I am such a fan. This is in my box of bad movies I love. I love the Venom movies. They're not good, but I love those movies because I love Tom Hardy. He was supposed to make a cameo. And my friend saw it, and I said, "Hey, how was the cameo?" He says, "Oh no, that was a lie. They cut that." And I'm like, "Cool, thank you for saving me that that $7. There's no way I'm seeing this film now." The only first thing I agree, and I think what you're internalizing is this is everything wrong with Hollywood personifying the film. Where I disagree 100% is this was the greatest film of all time. It gave us all the memes. It's Morbin time.
Somebody turn his mic off. Turn his mic off.
Cut him off. Cut him off. He's
Turn Mike's mic off.
cut him off. Cut it. Cut it. He's speaking truth to power. I love the jokes, but man, this was a. I mean, they made Sony re-release it because of the jokes, and it bombed again. It made like $8,000. Jokes aside, which were legitimately funny, what a waste of everyone's time and money. These are the movies that make me angry. Cause I'm like, people were paid more money than probably all of us combined for a year.
And I mean, didn't they push this release date back twice?
Yes,
They did.
And here's what's gonna always be remembered
You
in
know what date
Hollywood.
it landed on?
April 1st.
How apropos.
Oh my goodness! It's almost like this can't be serious. It's probably the only movie in time ever to bomb twice. It will be a joke forever, but again, as Hollywood is apt to do, it won't learn any lessons from this, and they're just gonna keep pumping out garbage. No one asked for this. No one wanted this. I work in a comic shop, people. I'm telling you right now, I have never met somebody who Michael Morbius was their favorite character. Everyone knows him. He is a major character, I will say that, but he is no one's favorite. So everyone's like, what are we doing here? No, outside of the memes declaring this is the greatest film of all time, I got no enjoyment from this. I'll never see it. There's no timeline in which I'll ever see this. And they even wasted my beautiful Michael Keaton because he has a cameo in it. I just watched that on YouTube.
No.
He
Because Vulcan, because he plays
Vulture apparently,
yes.
and people even told me it doesn't even make context in the film. He gets teleported over there, and they just meet. And they were like, you could tell Michael Keaton has no idea what he's doing because people have told me it looks like his scenes were shot, not with him. They just cut them together. What a mess! And this is unfortunately to me what I see. I'm not seeing the Northman trend happening. I'm seeing the Morbin time, the Morbius happening. Oh man, just miss me, man. I'm done with Hollywood.
Yeah.
Where's the nearest tallest window I can jump out of?
Yeah. It's again, this is the reason why that stuff sucks, because you'll always find somebody who's gonna go, "Why are you guys so angry? That was a great movie. The spectacle, the cinematography." And it's like, if you like that film, that's fine for you. We're just telling you, we've seen a lot of films, and most of them good ones. And so when you look at this film and sit it next to the good films,
Right.
you can totally see the contrast.
Right. There are films I will go see as a joke, but
Yes.
I know they're a joke. I just sat in a theater with probably 300 people laughing at The Brain and Brain Damage, hosted by Joe Bob Briggs of the Texas Theater, which was a spectacular event.
Right.
I went to see that. I went to see those movies, taking them seriously because they're terrible.
Yeah.
There are films that this was not released as a joke, and then they try to re-release it as a joke, and it dies both times on the vine. Done. When big franchises go joke, I don't want to see them.
No.
I'll end on this sad note. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
The Northman,
Yeah.
70 million budget, $68 million.
It's a shame.
Morbius, 100 million budget, $163 million. You realize a movie that people didn't see on a joke stomped out of one of the best films in the last 2 years. Stomped it, and it's not even close. I don't want to live on this planet anymore. I want the first ship off. I don't understand this. Crazy, man. Crazy.
And so we're going to get just more Marvel in the theaters. Oh,
right.
PJ, I know you're looking forward to that. Let's get on out of here, guys.
right,
we
man.
are. So who you shouting out to? Horror Mike?
Mom, Dad, love you guys. You're always fun to see. Jesus, Garrett, I know you watches some of our episodes. And Just you guys. I don't think. Do we ever shout out to our co-host?
You can. You
Vega
sure
Bomber,
can.
K-Zach. You guys are awesome. I always love hanging out with you guys.
Appreciate it, man. We love having you on, and so do they.
Yeah.
How about you, K-Zach? Who you shouting out to?
Of course, we do want to go ahead and shout out all our other shows here on DallasOnAir.com. Do make sure to tune in on our Talk Nerdy to Me Sundays, where you can see me with Cole Houston on the Rancor Pit and on Isle of Toys. And also check out all the great other stuff that we have here on the network. You can always see something like Say Something. You can always check out It's the ADD Show. Check out all the weird and great stuff that we have here on DallasOnAir.com. A special shout outs to Jansen and Kat for giving us a home here every Sunday, man.
Yeah, and so my shout outs, I'm going to give my first shout out to Film Samurai, who I saw yesterday. I helped him secure a specific, the Julie Newmar 66 TV series Batman came out. Right. And I helped him get one of those before the scalpers got them all in the collectors. So, yes, buddy. Cole Houston again, of course, Eddie Medina, Freddie, Daniel Meza, Prim, Troy Ross, Barry and Brandy Austin, that couple that loves movies a lot. I've seen a couple of movies with them for sure. Sean Presley, Lauren Wiedauer, Tristan Fraser, and the other YouTuber that I watch from time to time is Harry Thomas. So that's who I have. Guys, thank you all for checking this out, and certainly meet us in the comment section if there's something that you thought we left off or something that you'd like to add, or if you think we're crazy. It's all good. It's the internet. People tend to be that way anyway. So go ahead. We're telling you it's all right. Doesn't hurt us. Our skin's a lot thicker than that. Unless it's Marvel jokes. That's when we go crazy. But at any rate, we're out of here, and we'll see you guys next. Y'all enjoy your 4th of July weekend. And Mike?
All right. Later, guys.
We're out.
We're out.